If you think the NFA tax stamp is gone and you're finally covered, I need you to stop and think again. Because right now, thousands of gun owners are walking around with a dangerous false sense of security they heard. One headline assumed the whole system changed, and they have no idea about the traps still waiting for them. And if you don't know what those traps are, you could end up on the wrong side of federal law without ever seeing it coming. Quick question before we continue: are you subscribed? Because what I'm about to reveal could keep you out of serious legal trouble. This is one of the fastest moving areas of gun law right now, and the people who aren't subscribed are the ones who find out about changes after they've already broken a rule. Hit that button now. I'll wait. Okay, let's get into it. Here's what just happened. And it's genuinely historic. On July 4th, 2025, the president signed a massive budget law called the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. Buried inside that law was a change that gun owners had been fighting for 4 decades. The law eliminated the $200 federal tax on certain NFA items. Let me explain what that means, because this confuses a lot of people. The NFA, or National Firearms Act, is a very old law from 1934 that controls special kinds of firearms and accessories. Things like silencers, which people also call suppressors, short-barreled rifles, short-barreled shotguns, and something called an AO, which stands for any other weapon. For almost a century, if you wanted one of these items, you had to pay a $200 tax to the government. People called it the tax stamp, and you also had to register the item, get approved, and wait months for your paperwork to come back. Now here's the part that's exciting. Starting January 1st, 2026, that $200 tax dropped to zero for silencers, short-barreled rifles, short-barreled shotguns, and AOs, $0. No more tax stamp for those items. That's a real change, signed into law, and it's already in effect. If you've been putting off buying a silencer because of the tax, that excuse just disappeared. The tax is gone, and that's the good news. But here's the part that most people are getting wrong, and this is where I have to slow you down. Let me give you a little history first, because it explains everything. That $200 tax has been around since 1934. It was created during the Great Depression, at a time when the government was terrified of gangsters with machine guns. The idea was simple. If you make something expensive and hard to get, fewer people will have it. So they slapped a $200 tax on certain weapons, and they added a registration system on top of it. It. Back then, $200 was a fortune. It was more than a month's pay for a lot of families. So the tax wasn't just about money. It was a wall. It kept ordinary people out of the market for these items entirely. And that wall stood for almost a century. Generations of gun owners grew up believing that silencers and short-barreled rifles were basically impossible to own, because that's what the system was designed to make them think. Now here's what changed. When Congress passed the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, it didn't just lower the tax, it removed it completely for those 4 categories of items, and that's a bigger deal than most people realize, because for the first time in 90 years, the government is telling you, we are not going to use money to keep you away from these items anymore. That's genuinely historic, but here's the catch, and this is the part that trips people up. Removing the tax did not remove the rest of the system, and that's where the false sense of security comes from. Let me break this down for you, because this is the part nobody's talking about. The tax going to 2-0 does not mean the NFA disappeared. It does not mean these items are now completely unregulated. It does not mean you can just buy a silencer at a garage sale and throw it in your trunk. The tax is one piece of a much bigger system. And when you remove one piece, the rest of the machine keeps running. The registration requirements, the background checks, the approval process, the forms, a lot of that is still there, at least for now. And that's exactly why so many people are about to make a very expensive mistake. If you're finding this helpful, imagine what you'll learn in my next video. I'm breaking down the exact steps to buy a suppressor in 2026 without getting tangled up in the paperwork. Subscribe so you don't miss it. It could save you months of waiting and a whole lot of confusion. Now this is where it gets really interesting, because while everyone was celebrating the tax change, something else happened that most gun owners completely missed. On August 5th, 2026, a federal judge in Texas named Judge Hendrix dropped a ruling that shook the entire industry. The case is called Silencer Shop Foundation versus ATF, and here's what the judge said. He ruled that the registration and approval requirements for silencers, short-barreled rifles, and short-barreled shotguns are unconstitutional. Now let me explain why he said that, because it's actually a clever argument. The government's whole reason for controlling these items was tied to the tax. The tax was the legal foundation of the system. But when Congress eliminated the tax, the judge said, the foundation is gone. If there's no tax anymore, then forcing you to register and wait for approval doesn't make sense anymore. So he blocked the ATF from enforcing those registration requirements against the people in the case, and here's the part that shocked me. The ruling took effect on August 13, 2026, and the government had a short window to appeal it. They let that window pass. The Justice Department did not appeal. That means, for now, the ruling stands. The ATF is barred from enforcing those registration requirements against the parties covered by the case. People who are part of that case and members of the organizations that sued can now buy silencers and short-barreled rifles without the old registration and approval process, at least in the areas the ruling covers. When I found this out, I couldn't believe it. This is a massive deal, but here's the thing. And this is the part that brings us right back to the title of this video. If you think you're covered, think again, because this ruling is not the free-for-all that some people are pretending it is. And here's something else you need to understand about this ruling. It's not just about you and your paperwork. It's about the whole industry that sits behind these items. Think about the dealers, the manufacturers, the shops that process these forms. For decades, they built their entire business around the NFA process. They hired people to handle the registration. They built software to track the approvals. They trained their staff on every rule. And now, overnight, the ground under them has shifted. Some of them are celebrating, some of them are scrambling, and a lot of them are telling their customers, wait, we're not sure yet. That uncertainty is real, and it's one more reason why you cannot just assume everything is fine. The people who work in this industry every single day are still trying to figure out what the new rules mean. If they're not sure yet, you shouldn't be either. Let me show you exactly what I mean. Here's the first trap. The ruling only covers the people in the case. It is not a nationwide law. It applies to the parties who sued and 2 members of the organizations that brought the case. Some reports say that reaches into about 15 states. But if you live outside that coverage, or if you're not a member of one of those organizations, this ruling does not automatically protect you. The rules that apply to you might still be the old rules, and that's the danger. People hear suppressors are deregulated, and they assume it applies to them no matter where they live. That is not how it works. Court rulings are not laws that apply to everyone. They apply to the people in the case, and until a higher court or Congress makes this universal, you have to know exactly where you stand. Here's the second trap, and this one is even more important. The tax is gone for some items, but not for everything. Machine guns are still fully regulated, and they still carry the $200 tax. Destructive devices are still fully regulated too. Those did not change. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act only removed the tax for silencers, short-barreled rifles, short-barreled shotguns, and AOWs. Machine guns and destructive devices are still on the old system. So if you think you can skip the paperwork on a machine gun because the tax stamp is gone, you are dangerously wrong. That item still requires the full NFA process, the $200 tax, the registration, the approval. Nothing about that changed, and violating those rules is a serious federal crime. This is one of those mistakes that people make once and regret for the rest of their lives. And here's the third trap, and this is the one that catches people who live in strict states. Federal law is not the only law. Your state has its own rules, and some states still ban silencers completely. Some states still ban short-barreled rifles. The federal tax going to zero does not override your state's laws. If your state says suppressors are illegal, they are illegal for you, no matter what the federal government says. I've seen people get this wrong over and over. They buy a suppressor legally under federal law, and then they get charged under their own state law. The federal change is real, but it does not erase your state's restrictions. You have to check your own state's laws before you buy anything. Don't make this mistake. It's one of the most common ways gun owners get into trouble right now. Hey, let me pause here for a second. Did you know that most people who watch a video like this never hit subscribe? It's true. They watch, they learn, they leave, and then they miss the next update. Don't be that person. Join the tens of thousands of gun owners who get these legal updates first. Hit subscribe right now. It's free. It takes 2 seconds, and it keeps you informed. Okay, back to the traps. Here's the fourth trap, and this one is about the paperwork that's still floating around. Remember, the tax change took effect January 1st, 2026, but the Hendrix ruling didn't come until August. So between those 2 dates, a lot of people filed forms under the new $0 system, and a lot of those forms are still sitting in the ATF's system, waiting for approval. Here's the thing the ATF has said. They have not stopped processing NFA forms. That means the old approval process is still running for a lot of people. If you filed a form before the ruling, or if you're not covered by the ruling, you may still be waiting for approval. And here's the part that surprises people. Even with the tax at zero, the ATF has been working on new rules to adjust the system. There's a proposed rule out there that would change the tax remittance process. The rules are literally still being written as we speak. So if you think the system is settled, think again. It is moving, it is changing, and you need to keep up with it. And here's the fifth trap, the one that nobody wants to talk about. The Hendrix ruling could still be challenged. The government chose not to appeal this time, but that doesn't mean it's over forever. A higher court could still step in. Congress could still pass new laws. The ATF could still write new rules that change how all of this works. In the world of firearms law, nothing is ever truly finished. It's always one ruling away from changing again. So the people who do well in this environment are the ones who treat every new development as a chapter, not as the end of the book. They stay flexible, they stay informed, and they never assume that today's rules will be tomorrow's rules. Now let me give you a hypothetical example to explain how all of this comes together. Imagine two friends, let's call them Alex and Ben. Both of them live in states where suppressors are legal. Alex hears the news that the tax is gone, so he goes online, buys a suppressor, and skips every step of the process. He doesn't check whether he's covered by the court ruling. He doesn't check his state law. He doesn't file any paperwork. He just assumes he's fine because the headline said the tax stamp is gone. Ben does it differently. Ben checks whether the ruling covers him. He checks his state's laws. He talks to a dealer who knows the current rules, and he follows the process that actually applies to him right now. Now, here's what happens. Alex ends up in possession of a suppressor that he may not legally own under the rules that apply to him. And if he gets caught, he's facing serious federal and state consequences. Ben ends up with a suppressor he legally owns, with all his paperwork in order and nothing to worry about. Same product, same excitement, completely different outcome. And the only difference is that Ben took 30 minutes to figure out the actual rules instead of trusting a headline. That hypothetical is exactly the point of this video. The headline says you're covered. The reality is more complicated, and in the world of federal firearms law, complicated means dangerous if you don't understand it. This is the part that should genuinely scare you a little, in a good way, because the people who get hurt by these changes are never the ones who asked questions. They're the ones who assumed, here's what most people get wrong about this whole situation. They think one change means everything changed. It doesn't. The tax change is real. The court ruling is real, but they are pieces of a puzzle, not the whole puzzle. The machine gun rules didn't change. The destructive device rules didn't change. State laws didn't change. The ATF's processing system didn't just disappear, and the court ruling itself could still be appealed later or challenged in a higher court. Nothing in the law is permanent. That's the nature of this game. So the smart move is not to assume. The smart move is to verify every single time for every single item in your specific state. Let me give you a simple checklist you can use, because this is the part that actually protects you. First thing, ask yourself, is this item one of the 4 that lost the tax? Silencers, short-barreled rifles, short-barreled shotguns, and AOWs. If it's a machine gun or a destructive device, stop right there. Those rules did not change. Second thing, ask yourself, does the court ruling cover me? Am I a party to the case or a member of one of the organizations that sued? If you're not sure, find out before you buy. Third thing, ask yourself, what does my state say? Your state can still ban these items completely, and state law wins for you. Fourth thing, ask yourself, what does my dealer say? The person transferring the item to you has to follow the rules too. If your dealer is confused, slow down until it's clear. That's it. For questions, 30 minutes, and you've just saved yourself from the most expensive mistake in this whole story. And here's the part that brings it all together. The direction of travel is good. It really is. For the first time in decades, the federal government is moving away from controlling these items, not toward it. The tax is gone. A federal judge struck down registration requirements. The government chose not to appeal. That is a genuinely historic moment for gun owners. You should be encouraged by it, but encouragement is not the same as carelessness. And right now, the people who are getting into trouble are the ones who let encouragement turn into carelessness. Don't let that be you. Enjoy the wins, but stay sharp. Now, quick legal note, this video is educational information, not legal advice. Laws change all the time, and they're different in every state. What's true in Texas might not be true in California. So always consult a qualified attorney for your specific situation. Now, back to it. Here's the urgency part. This information is changing fast, like really fast. The next ruling could drop any day. The ATF could finalize a new rule at any moment, and my next video is about the Exact steps you need to take right now to make sure you're actually covered, not just assuming you are. If you're not subscribed, you'll miss it. And you don't want to find out about a change in the rules after you've already broken them. Subscribe now. Stay ahead. So let me leave you with this. The tax stamp is gone. That's real. A federal judge struck down registration rules. That's real too. But neither one means you can throw caution to. The wind, machine guns are still regulated. Destructive devices are still regulated. Your state's laws are still your state's laws, and the court ruling only covers certain people in certain places. If you think you're covered, think again, then check, then verify. Because the difference between a legal win and a legal disaster is usually just a few minutes of homework. Your rights are worth protecting, and the best way to protect them is to stay informed, stay calm, and stay involved. That's what this channel is for, and that's why I need you to subscribe, because this story is far from over. The next chapter is going to be written by people who are paying attention. Be one of them. Hit subscribe now. Now, share this video with a gun owner who needs to hear it, and leave a comment telling me which trap surprised you the most. I read every single one, and one last thing, if you only remember one sentence from this whole video, let it be this. The rules are changing in your favor, but favor is not the same as free. Know your state, know your item, know your process. Stay safe out there, know your rights, and I'll see you in the next one.